Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons, where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgy kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as the link to our good friends at Critical Failures. Check us out every Wednesday night and catch up on all the sessions you might have missed. It's a fun time. There's a bunch of great players, and we tend to get at each other pretty often, which is a lot of fun for us and terrible for our DM. So with that out of the way, we're going to jump into this week's video. We're talking about the LOCATHAH. The LOCATHAH are fish people. Think creature of the Black Lagoon kind of people. They are gross looking. They do not have teeth for some reason. They have big, huge, bulbous black eyes. They are strange. When I first saw pictures of them, I thought, I am never going to play this species. It was just this irritating picture of this giant fish with stick arms and legs, and I was like, this looks terrible. I can't be this. I'm never going to be this. But that's actually a really bad depiction of what they look like, because they're humanoids that are at least 5 to 6 feet tall. They're kind of the same height as humans. They are bipedal. They breathe air and water. They are just gross looking. And as soon as I started seeing like real art and like seeing like real them kind of like as mer people, I started to like them a lot more, which was great. I was so happy when they were not small 2 to 3 feet creatures, because as we all know, my patience for them are very limited. But they are cool. They have a very interesting history to them. They used to live in a deep, dark ocean, and they used to dwell with old gods. And they were abused and slaved and tormented and tricked by other races and species who have constantly just caused them to be at war. And they always waited till they were like the LOCATHAH and were always at war with each other or having issues with each other to pit them against each other, and then that way they would stand no chance. So over time, they've like learned and become extremely tight-knit and very tribal, and keeping everything together so that way they can survive, and it's always them versus everyone else. And that kind of mentality kind of drove them to where they are now. So it's cool because you can have this like very distrustworthy view on everything on the outside. You're going to hate other seafaring creatures like tritons and sea elves. Like, you're not going to want to be with those people because they were around. You know, you could have histories of them slaving you and other issues of them just being at war for just survival. So it's very, very cool. And once you start dealing with the deep ocean, just in theory and what the thought process are, it's so close to home yet so alien. Because there's like octopuses, and I happen to love octopuses. There's like all these huge creatures that wouldn't normally be that big if they weren't in the ocean, in the deep ocean specifically. So the rules kind of change. You're in perpetual darkness. You have to find specific ways to survive. Food is very scarce, and everything is very big and very hungry. So what you do to survive has to have a significant tactical advantage to it. Otherwise, you are not going to survive. So numbers are important to you. So you can really drive that kind of like bizarre possession over party members and things like that, because you need them to survive, which is a great thing to set up, because no matter what your alignment is, you start wielding an iron fist when it comes to protecting your own, and that can always be fun. You can be, I don't like being party bomb, and there's always one in the group, but you could be the chains that hold your party together, and that could be interesting. So you do have a base walking speed of 30 feet and a swim speed of 30 feet. You have an ability called Observant and Athletic. You're proficient in athletic and perception skills, which is great because obviously you want to be able to see as well as you can. And athletics is awesome because I imagine in the water there's a lot of extreme things you have to do just to survive. You also have Leviathan Will. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned, stunned, or put to sleep. That is wildly strong. It's not just one or two of these. It's not just the charmed condition or the frightened condition. Like, all of these is a lot. There's a big amount of status ailments just from poisoned. Stunned happens. Frightened happens quite often. Charms, I wish DMs would use charms more, because it will ruin players' lives. But that's a big amount of conditions that you have advantage against. And considering you already have proficiency in perception skill, a lot of those come between wisdom saves, which could be very beneficial for you to look into. You also have limited amphibiousness. You can breathe air and water, but you need to be submerged at least once every 4 hours to avoid suffocating. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I'm just mention the last ability and we'll circle back. You also have natural armor. You have tough, scaly skin. When you aren't wearing armor, your AC is 12 plus your dexterity modifier. You can use your natural armor to determine your AC if the armor you would wear would leave you with a lower AC. A shield's benefit applies as normal while you use your natural armor. So it's a little bit inferior to the lizard folks' natural armor, where they have like 13 plus your dex. 12 plus your dex, if you were going to dex build, gives you a 17 AC when you max out dex. You put a shield, you're rocking out at 19. You grabbed the dual wielder fighting style, and you're at 18 armor class. That's before you get things like items like the cloak of protection or anything that can bump up your AC. That does give you a pretty substantial amount of AC. Are you great? No. But you will be able to dodge a pretty good amount of attacks. Keep in mind, that's a great thing to have. Again, your armor will kind of depict what kind of class you are. If you're like a warlock or a wizard, and maybe you decide to take that invocation for mage armor would always be better than this. But you have this base no matter what. So let's talk about limited amphibiousness. I would absolutely change this to the Grong's circumstance with it. The reason I say this is the Grongs have to be submerged in water at least 1 hour a day, otherwise they suffer a level of exhaustion. I think that makes more sense than you dying, first off. I get that this is kind of built around this idea that you're only going to use LOCATHAH in certain kind of campaigns where water is always around, but take into consideration a dungeon that opens up at the other end, and your party needs to take a long rest. You now become a severe burden to your party. Even if you make it through that dungeon and you cannot go back the way you came, you will die. You will die. You also do not have anything that makes you sleep for a limited amount of time. So either you're sleeping in water, or someone is just pouring it on you while you sleep. Otherwise, you die. So it's clearly a design flaw, and it had to be corrected. It never has been, because again, this has come from like a very kind of special release. The LOCATHAH, they aren't really in any kind of source book outside of the book LOCATHAH Rising, which is kind of just released. I cover them because I think they're awesome. Otherwise, I would kind of just let it go. I'm going to cover the Grong too, because they were part of a charity release kind of a thing. I think that's important. So that has to be changed, obviously. It's just impractical. It doesn't work. Unless you're doing Ghost of Saltmarsh or something like that. It's not going to happen where you'll ever constantly... Or where are you going to find a bathtub? You know what I mean? Out in the wilderness. And lakes are not as frequent as you think. But I think turning it down to the Grong really makes it more feasible. Just 1 hour, you just got to douse yourself in water. I get it. You're a fish person. No one's really going to bat too many eyelashes. Decanter of Endless Water will do it for you. That's going to be a magic item. It's going to be in high demand. You should absolutely be forced to do something you don't like in order to get it. DM should really be pushing that on you. Because I think it's a necessity to survive. It's got to be available and should be a reward for doing something. With all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. If you've made it this far, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. Definitely be a LOCATHAH. Definitely give it a shot. They are gross and they are weird looking, and I love that. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. A big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game over at their channel. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.